think and what I suspect each of you thinks as well. Each of us is unique. Each of us has our own strengths and our own interests. Each of us learns in our own way at our own pace. Each of us brings to our learning experiences our life experiences, and each of us strives for success. Learning is personal, and it should be personal. One child, one education. I believe that learning occurs naturally when people are interested, and that's the key for schools, is how to make kids interested or keep them interested, keep them engaged. So it's about engagement, finding ways to keep students interested in their education as they go through. And I believe that schools get something fundamentally wrong, and I think it's structural. And I think that, that schools are largely designed for the adults in the schools. They think about it. The teachers get to spend all day in their area of passion, their area of interest. I was a math teacher for 25 years. I love math, I'm good at math, and I got to spend all day talking about math, whereas the students, perhaps their area of interest isn't even addressed in their schools. Maybe they get that, maybe they're also interested in math and they get 45 minutes a day talking about math, and then they move from class to class to class in 45-minute sections. Perhaps none of those classes typically have anything to do with the other, and maybe they're interested in some more than others, but maybe they're not interested in a lot of them, and maybe they have low aptitude in some and not in others. This is backwards. We need to flip the school around where students should be spending their days exploring their passions in their areas of passions, and teachers should be supporting them and instructing them along the way. This model of education is it's a mass production kind of a model. And Will Richardson, author, describes this as a just-in-case model, where we just throw everything in and keep throwing it in just in case the student might someday need it. Well, we know this doesn't work. We know kids can remember things for the test next week, but 2 weeks later they've forgotten a lot of it. 2 years later they've forgotten most of it. And I don't know about you, but I studied calculus in high school. I couldn't do calculus now to save my life. Most of us forget a lot of what we're taught in education. That's a lost opportunity. How could we have better spent our time in school to help kids find their paths and move along their own journeys? I'm going to give you an example of a student who lived this personal educational path a little bit. This is a student I know named Owen. Owen was homeschooled through his first 8 years, and during that time his mother tells me that she followed his interests. And he came to school in 9th grade, and Owen was well prepared. He could do an academically rigorous program, fit right in. And he did that for several years, and then became frustrated because he didn't have any time to pursue his passions. School was so all-consuming that he spent all his time doing work that other people asked for him to do, and he had been accustomed to being able to do his own work. So Owen arranged with his parents and his school to take a semester of his senior year off, very unconventional. And he took that year off and he did metalworking for that year, or for the semester. And so he spent his afternoons doing metalworking. He learned lots of interesting things. He learned how to design. He learned how to problem solve. He learned how to make something with his hands. And he learned about metals, different properties of metals. And he learned about how to shape and cut and form metal. And so he learned lots of interesting things. But in the evenings, he did some of the English work that he was missing from his class. So he read the novels and wrote the papers. And he took an online math class. Owen had a great semester. Owen's in college now and doing well. And what we learned from this experience is, first of all, he doesn't have to be in school to learn math and English. And secondly, by allowing him to follow his passion, he stayed engaged in learning and really learned some essential things about himself in the process, including developing a strong sense of confidence and an idea of what he liked and what he might want to do and what he might not want to do. And by the way, he's not pursuing metalworking as a career. Contrast Owen's experience with an experience I read about two girls who were ideal students in every sense of the word. They did well in school. They got good grades. They got good test scores. and they were in after-school activities and clubs. But when it came time, their senior year, to write their college essay, they didn't know what to write about. And the college counselor said, well, write about something you're passionate about. They didn't have a clue where to start. They had spent their whole lives, their whole school careers, answering other people's questions and doing work that other people asked of them that they hadn't taken the time to learn their own. So this is a missed opportunity. Instead, I think that schools should have been guiding them on their inner journeys, helping them express themselves, helping them identify what they are good at and what they're interested in, and helping them build that narrative for themselves. Owen is a special kid, but he's not unique. I know, for example, of a couple of students who started a program. They piloted an oral history program with hospice in Northwest Ohio, where they spent time with dying patients, hearing their life story, videotaping it, so that they could leave this legacy for their grandchildren, so that their lives and their memories would live on. That program is still used today, and by the way, one of the students who did that videotaping now has a career in the film industry. I know of a student who taught himself how to code when he was 9 years old, and he did that, not in school, but he did that online learning, and he did that through networking with adults in the community who code, and now he mentors older kids than him on the school's robotics team and helping them learn how to code. I know a student who worked with an organization in the city to arrange to buy some lawn equipment, lawnmowers and other tools, so that people in this neighborhood could borrow those and earn money for some much needed extra money. And I know of a student, a strange story, I know of a student who has this, who would self-describe sneakerhead, who was a member of what he called the sneaker culture, which I didn't even know existed. And he spent 3 weeks at a sneaker boutique in Manhattan learning how to buy shoes, how to sell shoes, how to price shoes, and how to anticipate where the sneaker market was going. And he can talk passionately about the concept of branding and brand identity and how the psychology of people who associate with one brand versus another brand. He's passionate about it. There's this great quote from Einstein. It says, everyone is a genius, but if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Einstein's not saying that everybody can be an Einstein. What he is saying is that everybody has something in them that they're better at than other things. And it should be the job of schools to help kids identify that, nurture it, and grow it. I'm reminded of the acorn theory. You know, every acorn has coded in it the oak tree that it someday will become. So too do children, I think, have coded in their DNA things that they're better at than other things. And schools shouldn't educate them away from that. They should educate them into that. And so it's an inner journey that teachers and schools need to lead their kids on. You know, there's a 10,000-hour rule that you've probably heard of, which is it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. Well, the trick is it's not 10,000 hours doing anything. It's 10,000 hours doing something that you have an aptitude for. I can attest to that. I have probably spent 10,000 hours playing guitar, and I'm still not any good at it. I'm better than I was when I started, but really you have to pick something that you have an aptitude for. And that should be the job of schools, is helping kids identify it and helping them begin on that journey of their 10,000 hours. So this raises a question for me. How to spend our time in schools? Should we spend more time doing things that we're good at and that we love? Or should we spend more time on things that we maybe don't have an aptitude and that we struggle for? I'm reminded, for 25 years I was a math teacher, and it was not an uncommon thing. Each year for some student, say a basketball player, who was struggling in math, didn't have an aptitude or wasn't ready at that time in his life to learn the math that we were teaching him. And his parents would take away the basketball so that he could devote his time to the math. Think about it. Something that he was good at, something that he dreamed about, something that he went on his own, would go out in the driveway and shoot for hours, practice dribbling, something that he had an identity around and that gave him a sense of confidence and purpose, took that away and made him do something that made him feel bad about himself, made him feel stupid, and made him feel like he wasn't smart and wasn't going to be successful. It's the wrong thing to do. Instead, we should be encouraging that kid to do what they have a passion for and finding a way to teach them what they need in order to be successful. So what does personalized education look like? Our early childhood educators know that it's wise to follow student interest. I was talking to a couple of kindergarten teachers a year ago, and they told me, we begin each year without a lesson plan. Sure, we know what skills the kids need to be working on over the course of this year, but we're going to follow their interests. We're going to ask them, what do you want to study? What do you want to learn about? In this particular year that she was telling me about, the kids said, we want to learn about farm animals. Great. So they each had they could choose a farm animal they wanted to study. She got out picture books for them. They did vocabulary around farm animals. They did counting and stories and all that around farm animal that the kids were interested in. They took a field trip to a farm. They got to see the farm animals. They were inspired by it. They came back. They wanted to go to the farmer's market. They did a field trip to the farmer's market. They got excited by that. They wanted to have their own farmer's market. Farmers donated food. Their parents came in. They got to figure out how much to charge, and they got to count money and do all that. So the kids learned all these great skills that they would have learned anyway, but they learned them through an area of interest and an area of passion. So we do this in preschools frequently. But as kids get older and they move through the school system, we lose track of this. And it becomes teacher-guided instead of student-guided, teacher-centered instead of student-centered. And I think that it needs to flip. We need to put kids in charge and ask them. But there are some schools increasingly around the country that are doing this kind of thing. And I'll just mention a couple of them. There's Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia, which is a science, technology, and leadership magnet school. And they do project-based learning. The kids learn the scientific method, and they apply that methodology to all kinds of problems. There's a school it's actually a system of schools in San Diego, High Tech High, where they do project-based learning centered around community needs. They identify what the issues are in the community, and they help kids design projects and studies that they can then share out in the community. And then there's this really fascinating school in Minnesota called Shattuck St. Mary's. Shattuck's, it has what they call centers of excellence. And in these centers of excellence, kids choose when they come into this high school what they're going to focus on. It could be biology, engineering, it could be ice hockey, it could be soccer. And that's what they're going to spend most of their time doing. In this particular school, they spend Monday, Wednesday, and Friday all day on their area of passion. And so they're in the field, or they're in a laboratory, they're interning with a working engineer, somewhere in the community pursuing their passion, guided by their teachers. And then on Tuesday and Thursdays, they're in classes. And by the way, the teachers do what they call blended learning. They record their lessons, videotape them, and make them available online so that the kids can learn asynchronously. That's when they have time, they can open it up and learn it and study it. And they come to class, they can get questions answered by the teacher, or they can work on projects with their fellow students. So what do all these schools have in common, and in common with Owen's experience? It's giving students a voice and a choice, and this is critical. They all give students a voice and a choice. Now, we can do this in a lot of ways, and good teachers do it already. If you're having your students read a book, give them a choice of what book around a theme. If you are doing a project, let students choose what role they're going to play in the project. But more importantly, and we need to get to this point, let students choose the project that they're going to work on based on what they're interested in learning more about, and encourage that and nurture it. So that's one thing, giving students a voice and a choice. Next thing is the role of teachers changes in this model. Teachers are not simply instructors. They're not deliverers of content. But teachers are mentors. They follow the students. They pay attention to what the student is interested in. They help the students build their narrative, tell their story. They help them grow as individuals. Maybe they're going to do this interest for a while and they lose interest in that, but they segue it moves over to another interest. The student guides and charts that path the teacher guides that student along that path. And the student is a curator of student learning. There wasn't a teacher in Owen's school who knew metalworking. Somebody in the community needed to provide that. There wasn't a teacher in that that coding example I gave earlier who could teach him the coding. There were community members who could do that. The teacher curates the learning. They help the student find the resources they need, whether it's on the internet or it is another individual in the community. And finally, the teachers are instructors. They're paying attention to what the kids need as they're moving along their educational journey and making sure they're getting it. They're teaching them the math they need as they need it. They're teaching it to them in context. And finally, in personalized education, the kids need to be networked. I mean, technology is what makes this possible. Technology is not the goal, but technology is the means. And so with technology that we have available to us today, each kid can have their own schedule, and each kid can have their own curriculum. And so we need to, in these schools that we talked about, allow kids to use online learning as part of their coursework and part of getting their credits. There's lots of classes that can be offered that we can't do in an individual school, but they can take online. In fact, they can take an online course from Harvard, an online course from MIT. They can even get a high school diploma online. And so we have to help kids build networks of like-minded people around the world that they can share their learning and their passion with. So the use of technology is a critical part of this personalized learning journey. So personalized learning is not one size fits all. It is guided by the interests and the passions of the students. We help students along this journey, asking them questions and letting them take the lead. The theme of today's talk is it's the long view. And in education, the long view is really the short view. Paying attention to today, to now, to what the student is telling you, taking the short view helps that student prepare for a life of learning and a love of learning. Thank you.